Hello everyone, a warm welcome. It's Kelly Hampton, and I'd like to continue with Chapter 2, what happens on the other side in the kingdom of heaven, and other inspirational insights from Archangel Michael from my first book, Into the White Light, the Revelations of Archangel Michael. Chapter 1, we left off with registers exist for every human being, for every lifetime ever lived. I and other archangels review the registers annually. At times, we have asked for additional help if some of the registers hold complicated decisions. After we have reviewed the registers, they are passed along to higher masters. They are the master angels. There are only two master angels in the universe, Aphrodite and Zeus. I have met the female version only once, and never the male counterpart. They reside in an infinite dimension, yet in a second or a millisecond, they can be right beside me for guidance and support. Yes, Michael said, even archangels need guidance. After a master angel reviews a person's register, they pass it along to the halls of knowledge. Inside the halls of knowledge, all registers are displayed on a long table that is infinitely long. All registers exist for one purpose, and that is so my divine master can give praise and thanks to all who have lived. That is his purpose alone. We other servants along the way make general judgments, comments, and perhaps a suggestion to a register for a different lesson to be undertaken if the current life is filled with too many hardships. I personally find great satisfaction in altering a register. This is done by anyone on my level, and it happens often. As an example, a female soul has chosen the following lessons to learn in her current life: indecision, financial strife, prudence, and bearing false witness. Any one of these choices is enough learning for a lifetime for some souls, but for this woman it is almost life-threatening. Can a register be reviewed before a soul crosses over? Yes. The archangel said, I finished reviewing this woman's register, and she had lived in poverty. What exactly happens after a register is altered is worthy of discussion. Normally, after the change or changes have been suggested, sudden improving conditions enter the soul's life. For her, this meant that her husband, who was presumed dead in a war, returned to assist her with her needs and those of the family. There is nothing wrong if a register is altered. It does not mean that the earthly souls have failed. Actually, they have succeeded. Chapter 2, Creation. Now I would like to speak more directly about the creation. I mentioned how God created darkness and light. It is also my intent to teach the meaning and order of the universe. I have heard souls speak of the Big Bang Theory, that the universe was suddenly and powerfully created by some cataclysmic change of events. That is a falsehood that needs to be rectified. My God, your God, God of the universe, said unto himself that a world was to exist where there once was none, and so it was done. Some time after the creation of the planets, God created mankind. Mankind did not rise from the legs of an ape-like form. God made him. God designed humankind in his likeness. I am sure you have heard the words, in his likeness. It means that God took the best parts of himself, herself, and gave them to humanity. sight, smell, taste, hearing, and touch. God actually had other prototypes of humanity before. The first prototypes had no hair at all. They were to have been smaller than mankind today. He also created humans that were expressionless and lacking initiative. It makes no difference what type of humanity was created. What does matter is the lesson that God experimented when He created. Do you know of Sodom and Gomorrah? I will tell you about them. Soon after God created humankind, He needed a setting for man to inhabit. Sodom and Gomorrah were two young souls who were to have been God's experiment with creating an earthly utopia. He gave them everything they needed to live in peace and harmony. Instead, they abused what was given to them. Throughout history, much of the world has cursed Adam and Eve for creating the situation of sin. But it was Sodom and Gomorrah who inherited this fate and then passed it on. Had they followed the words of God, a utopian existence would be yours right now. Let me describe for you the world that mankind was meant to inhabit. Imagine a place so beautiful that your eyes would remain open to never lose sight of it. That is the beauty where I live. That, too, was intended to be the beauty for earthly souls. God envisioned a place where the slightest breeze would blow continually, a place where there would be a light, sensual smell arising from the earth. The air would be warm to the flesh, and sunlight would pervade the landscape and never be clouded or blurred. A place where fish and frog and turtle and salmon leap in the air. A place dusted with pine needles and other effervescent aromas. Imagine a light coming from a source other than the sun that filled all those living underneath with the deepest abiding love that they have ever known. This was to have been mankind's home, and it was going to be called Nirvana. As time passed, God grew weary of the business of man. He grew impatient. He decided to take action. He created Jesus and sent him to right the sins of Sodom and Gomorrah. Jesus took that lesson and became a savior for his own when he came to earth. It delighted his Father, but it was a surprise to him. Once known, his Father embraced his Son, for in him he found the perfection he was seeking. Next, I would like to speak of wasteful energy. Energy is involved in creation, and energy is what made Jesus. Jesus made me and made you. Imagine a flame that is flickering, 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 and then silently extinguished. That is what it feels like to angels when a soul has lost their energy for living. Our job as angels is to relight the candle so that it burns in despair as well as in acclaim, so that it burns brightly and is sustained over the course of each soul's life, life after life after life. If a soul has chosen difficult lessons, their candle should still burn brightly. I wish that I could come down to earth right now and scream at the top of my lungs, "Mankind, wake up, love yourself and your brother. Together you can make it through anything." That is why God created and intended man to multiply. He had a vision of Nirvana, where man helped man and solved problems together. I know that if I came to earth, I would lose my powers. That has been stated to us over the ages. Angels that come to earth without being asked lose their powers. Things that feed human energy are nutritious food. restful sleep, common desire, and love. See that you get these every day, and see your energy force connect you to my realm. That is real power. Resurrection. I realize that I need to devote some words to the resurrection of my Savior, since I informed you that I would be doing so. The resurrection is a bit more complicated a lesson, for it continues to this present day. There is not one incident that can be cited as being the resurrection, as is commonly stated in the King James Version of the Bible. The resurrection that I am speaking of is ongoing. Let me clarify this. To resurrect means to reclaim. I am using this opportunity to reclaim the messages of God and put them into current understanding. I am restating or reclaiming them. This is the resurrection of which I am speaking. This is the resurrection to which God refers, not the rising of his Son into his kingdom. That is a gross misunderstanding of the word and the law. To resurrect, rebuild, renew, retain, all the laws of the universe were what my Master intended. There are commandments to be retained and resurrected. There are ideas that are to be reclaimed and resurrected. There are faiths that are to be reclaimed and resurrected. So you see, my understanding of this term may be different from yours. Michael goes on to say, I love this word resurrect. It is everything universal. It is pure oneness, oneness with oneself. Self-loving is worthy of resurrecting here. Self-love is mandatory for growth in a lifetime. Without it, your chart and every soul's chart is examined upon entrance to this side, rewritten and begun again. With it, and a soul's chart is exalted. I ask you, do you truly love yourself? If you hesitate even for a second, you have work to do. Do it tonight. Recite the following verse. I am love. I give love freely. I love myself as I love my Master. This last one is especially important. I love myself as I love my Master, and my Master loves me. Repeat this for 30 nights. When I ask you again, you will answer, I do. Michael goes on to say, I left off with a brief description of the resurrection. There is so much more that I have to say. If I ask you to please describe your life, how long do you think it would take? I would say that every time you sat down to the task, you would think of new things to add. Such it is with the task of describing resurrection. Consider this. Once there was an ungodly-like king that lived in the 17th century. He governed his subjects by being ruthless and vindictive. Both of these are outside the goal set forth by my Master. One day, the subjects who were living in England at the time revolted. The king was beheaded. When such a thing happens, you may wonder what happens to a person's soul. It is resurrected. Know that resurrection can also apply to a person's soul. Resurrection is a word that has endless possibilities for description in the eyes of holy ones. When I was resurrected, I gained my wings. Before then, I could not fly. I could move about the universe, but I could not fly. I challenge you to consider parts of your lives that could be resurrected for the good of humanity. Go ahead and make a list. Begin today. The challenge is to list 5 things that you can resurrect to make better and more holy. After you have done this, look at the list. If you have written anything that begins with I, you need to begin again. I is an ego word. In this exercise, I want you to begin every sentence with a verb. Then see what a difference it makes. Once the list is complete and you feel comfortable with it, share it with at least 3 other people. Allow them to listen. Then destroy the list. Remember it in your heart. There will be another time in which you are asked to examine this exercise through the eyes of a blind person, a deaf person, a person of weaker intelligence. It makes no difference how the words arrive in the universe, just that they are done. I would like to make a series of general remarks and see if you can respond to them. I once was an angel. I once had love. I once knew God. I once knew my brothers and sisters as I know myself. Now think about each of these statements. Can you put them in order of importance? Let me restate them. I once was an angel. I once had love. I once knew God. I once knew my brothers and sisters as I know myself. Can you put them in order of importance? Ask yourself this question. If I died tomorrow, which one of these things would I desire? Do not answer out loud, he said. Simply think about your answer. I promise you this, that when we are finished with this text, your answer will have changed. This, too, is an exercise in resurrection. For what was born in your soul will need to be recreated, reborn, rebuilt, reconnected. That is the process of life. Renewing, reconnecting, resurrecting. Next, Jesus' path. I would like to describe the actual resurrection of my Master Jesus Christ, because it is a piece of the Trinity. For those non-Christians who may be hearing this word, the Trinity refers to my Father, His Son, and the Holy Ghost. For those listeners of the Baha'i faith and other less traditional faiths of the Christian-based world, the Trinity is called the grand cycle of life and the grand finale of death. In other religions, the Holy Trinity is barely recognized at all. Remember, the reincarnation element of supernatural power is exalted. If I examined every discernible religion in the world today, I would have thousands more examples to cite. As it is, I will say that my description of the Trinity to which I refer comes from my belief and the belief as it exists in my universe. By the way, there are other universes which are tremendously vaster than ours, but that is a topic for another time. The resurrection in the neo-Christian world-based theology is what I will describe. When my Master, Jesus, was condemned to the cross, he learned that he would be entering a kingdom greater than anything he knew on earth. An angel in a dream told him this. Up until then, Jesus did not know that he would be resurrected from the dead. He only learned this through a visit from the angel Gabriel. Gabriel and I are acquaintances in the kingdom. Gabriel appeared to Jesus on the night before his journey to Jerusalem. It was in Jerusalem, or Palestine, where Jesus was told that he would rise again in the glory of his Father. Stunned, Jesus replied to Gabriel, "But if I am to rise again in the glory of my Father, how is it that I will be able to serve him?" To which Gabriel replied, "Look over your shoulder, for in 3 days the birth of a baby will signify your deliverance. On the day that you cross over from this life, another boy child will be born, and his name will be Adam. Adam will release your fears. Adam will never know you, but you will learn of Adam. This is your sign of your Father's love. That night, when Jesus lay down to sleep, he thought about the message. He covered himself in willow branches and a rough piece of cloth given to him by a shepherd, which the shepherd had slipped past a jailer. At this time in history, Jesus had already been condemned to death. How many souls aware of such a fate would thank the person that condemned them? Nevertheless, this is exactly what my master did. Then he kissed his hand before being sent off to die. Think of this with all of your power. Would you kiss the hand of your enemy in forgiveness? That night, Jesus never slept. He spent his last hours in prayer and meditation, planning for his resurrection. He was told that on the third day of his death, another angel would come to him in the tomb. This time, I would visit him, not Gabriel. For this position, I was most eternally grateful to my Father. You see, I have first-hand knowledge of the events of the biblical resurrection, for I delivered the message. I will move to the third day, when my master ascended to the kingdom. Explanation is necessary here to help in understanding why it was that my master returned to earth. It was not, I repeat, not to prove his powers. His powers had already been proven. It was not to rejoice in living, for true rejoicing is done in this realm. It was done in order to show humanity that a life that is created could never be destroyed. Since God had selected Jesus to be perfect in creation, it was natural for him to use Jesus as the perfect example of a soul's reincarnation. After 3 days of joyous, trumpet-sounding news in my universe, Jesus made a covenant with his Father and asked his permission to return. He felt he had so much work to do on this side. He made a covenant with his Father. He asked his Father for permission to return to earth, but only for a short while. In exchange, his Father would allow Jesus to return once again in the future at a time of his choosing. The covenant was made. This choosing will be Jesus' second coming to the earthly plane. If I could describe my feelings as being the angel sent by God to deliver the message to Jesus, it would be to say that I was uncompromisingly filled with peace and love. Once awakened, Jesus lifted his head, looked around into the darkness of night, and asked aloud, "Angel, if this is to be true, show yourself to me." And I appeared over his shoulder. The light from my energy force appeared and surrounded him. He rose. He was barefooted, naked, scarred and bruised, when he went to the rock that sealed his fate. It was I, along with Jesus, who moved the rock from the wall where it was resting. My master's burial was above ground. Jesus saw Mary after leaving the tomb. Mary was an earth angel. She was told of the resurrection days earlier. She greeted Jesus as any mother would greet their own son, with her hands cradling his face and crying, my son, they told me of your coming." Mary blessed her son and held his hand as they walked down the dirt path to the town of Nazareth. From there, Jesus asked her to go to safety. She obeyed her son, and he set forth into the city. When Jesus came into the city, he rejoiced. He was not bitter. He was not ashamed. He was not filled with hate, for his Father asked him to come for humanity. The first woman on the outskirts of the city, who recognized the face of Jesus, ran to her dwelling to get him clothing. She ran after him carrying all she could find, which was a long and tattered robe. She handed it to Jesus, and he blessed her. He continued his walk, and as he walked, he came across more and more of the same faces he had seen during his long march to the crucifixion. These faces were in his path by the hand of my Master. Jesus blessed each one of them who had just 3 days earlier cast stones at him. This time, upon seeing Jesus, they bowed their heads and knelt. Jesus spent the remainder of this day walking, occasionally encountering people. Much of his walk was done in solitude, for this was his choosing. By nightfall on the first day, Jesus was instructed to meet his Father near the olive tree on the highest mount in the city. Obediently, Jesus followed his command. Once on the mount, my Master convened with his Father, and 2 angels flew Jesus to the other side. After Jesus ascended to join his Father, a band of angels greeted him. Thousands upon thousands of angels nursed his wounds. The wounds that I am speaking of are not of a bodily kind, but rather emotional wounds. You may think that Jesus was beyond healing, since he was a master healer, but he needed healing like every other soul that had visited the earthly plane. He complained that his job on earth was not finished. He did this before a tribunal of angels. We listened. We wrapped him in our arms. He continued his ascent for several days. Michael says days are an earthly term. I choose to use it here to help readers gain understanding, but there's no time in the dimension where I dwell. There is a point in the universe called the Northern Star. It is to this place that Jesus ascended. The North Star is a resting stop for master healers. Joan of Arc stopped here. So did Joseph. So did Moses. So have many other healers since the creation. Jesus dwelled in this healing spot for several more, quote, days before joining his Father in the kingdom we all inhabit. I have spoken to Jesus many times since his crucifixion. Whenever a soul is especially wounded, they arrive in the footsteps left by Jesus. His energy transcends all earthly logic and reason. If you doubt my words, look into a mirror. Examine the lines on your face. For every line you see is a mark from the tears of my Master. That is why all humanity ages and changes physical forms. The lines are there for a purpose. They are to remind humanity of the path Jesus walked before his resurrection. I have 6 more items that I wish to cover. They are: Item 1. If souls are to truly understand the laws of the universe, they must understand their Creator. Item 2. If humanity is to progress as a species, they must embrace faith. Item 3. Once a promise is made, a promise to God is to be kept. Item 4. Recalling past events in one's life is helpful only to move forward. Item 5. Rest is as important an activity as recreation. Find time for this every day if you are to study the laws of the universe. Item 6. Resurrection is available to all earthly souls if they so choose. If you choose to resurrect yourself, it will be. If you choose to remain on the plane of existence you currently are on, that is fine too. Know that it makes no difference to me if a soul chooses advancement or not. My love goes to all. Sometimes dark entities approach me with salvation on their mind. In these cases, I reach out for their hand, ask for divine blessings, and release them. Resurrection is always available at any time, at any place, for any being. All right, there's another installment. I thank you so much for listening. Take care and remain blessed.